So welcome, Laura, to Aspen Ignites.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's talk about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. What is it about an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurship that can really help our climate globally?
So, in order to tackle climate change, we know we need to take a full ecosystem approach, right? And entrepreneurs and small and growing businesses have a huge, really critical role to play in that ecosystem. Small businesses in developing countries are the largest employers, mostly in most countries, and so there's this huge opportunity to really support and leverage these businesses that are really developing and scaling new innovative climate solutions across mitigation, adaptation, and resilience.
I just was in India recently and we went to a small factory and they were talking about, they were building, not talking about, they were actually building like a small turbine engines in this small factory. Only 80 people worked there. And what kind of struck me about that was this was a place of innovation. This was an idea that hadn't been talked about so much in kind of the big ecosystem in India. So that innovation, that innovator is very critical to this idea, I would imagine.
Absolutely. There are so many incredible ideas and solutions that are already out there across the global south. And it's really important to elevate those stories of success and successful business models across the different scales and levels of business and entrepreneurship.
So in your work, are you dealing with those global entrepreneurs or are you focused mostly in the US?
So we are a network of over 200 support organizations that are then working directly with these entrepreneurs. We work in 8 chapters all around the global south. And so, yeah, we are really internationally focused, really trying to elevate the localized solutions in communities.
So what are you looking for? What kind of industries are these jobs being created and the businesses being created?
The incredible thing is climate change and environment really affects and impacts any sector that a business is working on, not to mention those businesses that are really objectively and specifically working on tackling climate action. So it's really a plethora and really exciting scope and range of business ideas.
So give me an example of something that's working.
So we have so many examples of our climate champions through our network. Just to provide one example specifically is, or 2 examples, how about?
I love more than one example. That's
right.
great. Yeah.
So in Ghana and Kenya, we've been working with 2 amazing organizations, Teleberry and the African Aquaculture Resource Center. And they are directly working to support and scale women climate entrepreneurs in aquaculture and agroforestry, in climate smart agriculture. And with that, they are being really effective in not only providing capacity building and those resources, but also really providing that value chain support. So really figuring out how best to connect these women businesses who are working in aquaculture, for example, but connecting them to the markets to scale properly. And in over a year, they've jointly created over 130 plus women climate businesses.
When people hear about these organizations and they hear about climate resilient jobs or climate change, it's kind of a big topic and it's hard for people to understand. But in these examples, you're talking about clean water. So what kind of work are they doing to make the water cleaner? I mean, what is their innovation?
Many different ways that this can be done and is being done. In this case, Teleberry is using solar water pumps to create more sustainable irrigation practices in agroforestry. So it's a combination of several different factors, but that's just one example.
And when you go out, do you help the businesses find the finances? Tell me how that works.
So as a network organization, we have a real wonderful range of organizations that are supporting these entrepreneurs, ranging from impact investors, DFIs, researchers, technical assistance providers, and local, regional, and global organizations. And again, speaking of the importance of this ecosystem building, that's critical, is bringing together the different roles and aspects that each organization is playing to really be able to provide that fuller support.
Do you think that there is resistance for financing something like this?
You know, it depends on, every organization, every funder has their own priorities, right? And so it depends on the sector, it depends on, where the organization is at in real time. But what we're finding is, especially on the entrepreneurial side, private sector people are now starting to realize is really critical to catalyzing climate action. But often the entrepreneurial side of that is missing in climate finance and funding. I believe it's only 2% of professional development assistance is going to entrepreneurs, and in the climate sector, even less than that. So there is this huge gap between these innovations, these projects that work, and the funding.
And is it mostly private funding, or does it depend on what country you're in?
It definitely depends, and we've actually at Andy have begun doing these green ecosystem snapshots because, as you say, each country is quite different, and it's really important to hone in on the current market abilities and gaps and opportunities in that country specifically. And so we've started doing this research to help us and help investors and funders, et cetera, figure out what are the best market opportunities and funding strategies for different sectors related to climate and environment.
Are governments getting in on that as well, or is it all private money?
Absolutely, governments also play a huge role, and there's a lot more that should be done and can be done, connecting not just the private sector, but the public sector, and facilitating more of those public-private partnerships.
Is there a country that you feel is a leader in this, something that we should all kind of look at and say, that's a great model?
That's a great question. There are really, in the past 5 years, there has been a lot of movement that we're seeing, and I would say there's not just one country that's taking the lead here. There are incredible examples, and we're seeing more kind of interest and acceptance and willingness to have these conversations on the policy side of local and country level governments to begin figuring out how best to bring in the role of entrepreneurship to these larger conversations. So not just one country, but many.
And how are you encouraging the entrepreneurs themselves? Here in the United States, a first-time business, I think the average age for someone is 40, right? And they take their institutional knowledge, their career knowledge, and they say, I know how to do that. And then they start their own company. How are you encouraging that elsewhere?
Oh, I would love that question, because youth have such an important role to play as well. And I think it's really starting at looking at every kind of level of education to begin with, but also making these opportunities known to younger people, that you can have a really successful business that is more economical or more economically resilient and sustainable because you begin integrating climate considerations into your business model. And so, I think it's awareness, it's capacity building, but it's also really, making sure that we're telling the story throughout these different levels.
Have you come across any companies where you or one of your colleagues might have said, that's a great idea, we can make it green?
Exactly. There are a lot of, in fact, I would argue to say pretty much every business model can and should become more green. And there are so many resources out there, and we are working to bring those resources that are already out there to this ecosystem that share more of these examples of no matter what sector you're already working in, there are concrete ways that you can start to consider greening that business. So you could take any sector, and there are a plethora of resources out there to start thinking about how to take those first steps.
I think that's something people don't think about enough, because I think they think of solar or they think of EVs, and they don't realize that there could be a building right next to their building that's a LEED building that is green, that inside their plumbing is green or their electricity is green, and the skills and the experience people have can be used in that kind of environment.
Absolutely. It's not, you're absolutely right to say, when we're talking about climate businesses, immediately people will go to thinking of solar panels or agriculture, which are really important large business opportunities. But there's so many other businesses that you wouldn't even necessarily know are considering sustainability in their businesses.
Yeah, HVAC's another example.
Exactly.
That people don't think about it, but your air conditioning is another example of something, or plumbing. Who wants a leaky pipe, right?
The built environment, especially as we know more populations are going to densify, to go into cities more, built environment is one where this is already a huge industry that is and needs to become more green.
And needs to be sustained, and sustained in a much better way, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here we are, we're at Aspen Ideas Climate. So there's a lot of like-minded people here.
Yes.
And I think most people would agree with you and say, oh, that makes a lot of sense, Laura. But how do you get that message to be universal?
That's so true. In the past couple of days here at Aspen Ideas Climate, we are hearing so many wonderful speakers and like-minded individuals. To answer your question, one quote comes to mind that was just at one of our sessions yesterday of thinking of integrating climate is often perceived as an inconvenience or something that is going to take more resources, more time away from your business. It'll cost me more money. When in reality, we know and we have seen that it's really quite the opposite. Integrating climate and sustainability, resilience into your business is a huge opportunity economically and also for the longevity of your business.
What do you want to see, let's say in the next 2 years, where do you want us to be?
I think the first step, which we are already taking wonderful steps toward, is more collaboration. As we're seeing here at this conference, there are so many people that are working toward the same goal, right? We all have the same vision for 5 years down the road, and it's really, I would love to see more people joining together instead of competing against each other for funding, for this knowledge sharing, to really bring together those different voices and different opinions and different perspectives into one ecosystem, into one more collaborative approach that is then really utilized for climate action. We need to take climate action now. There is no more time to wait, right? And so it's really figuring out how best can we utilize the resources, the tools, the reports that are already out there instead of recreating the wheel.
You're obviously very passionate about this idea and this subject. What fueled your passion for it?
Every single person on this planet, right, is being impacted and seeing these impacts of climate on their daily lives, myself included, having also worked and lived in developing countries for many years. When you realize that climate change is impacting every single aspect of our lives and people's livelihoods, there really is no other alternative than to start there. And that's something that when you when there is no escaping that reality, you know, that's why I'm so passionate about it. It is impacting every aspect of people's lives. It's impacting, you know, people's the way people are having their livelihoods, and it's really critical, I found and have seen firsthand, to also bring people out of poverty and really increasing economic possibilities.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much.